Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, part number 2, where we're going 129-130 Kentucky, Tennessee, down to Old Dominion in Georgia State. This is part number 2, every game on the board, rotation order, wager talk, live odds screen. That's how we're going down in numerical order with our number 2 hole hitter here, Teddy Covers at Teddy_covers. Check him out, wager talk and sportsmemo.com. Teddy, welcome in. How you feeling, man?
It's great to be here, Drew. It's awesome, man. Every Wednesday, you and I get to spend a little bit of time breaking down a piece of the college football card, something I look forward to, and let's roll right into it. Obviously, a bunch of games to talk about, and some good games to talk about this week as well.
Absolutely. Some big games on this slate, guys. Teddy is on each and every Wednesday. Also, Monday's NFL opening line report on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. That is a must-see if you like betting the NFL, 10 a.m. Pacific time on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. Set your calendars to that. But, Teddy, let's get into it. Every game on the board, 129-130, 7 o'clock Eastern kick. Arguably the game of the weekend here, Teddy. Kentucky at Tennessee. We are seeing the Volunteers minus 12 to as high as minus 13. Kind of a consensus minus 12.5 point favorite as we're talking midweek, 62.5 being the total in Knoxville.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a case to be made for both teams here. And I think the Kentucky case might even be easier than the Tennessee case, being that, let's see, Kentucky has a first-round NFL quarterback, in theory, Will Levis. Okay. They have a defense and a track record of stepping up well in class in games like this. They're coming off a bye week, and Stoops plus points has been a positive expectation wager this year, last year, in most recent seasons. This has been a pretty good role for Kentucky. But if you're going to take Kentucky, you got to step in front of the number 1 offense in the country. And even last week, okay, yes, Kentucky is coming off a bye, and Tennessee isn't coming off a bye, but they had Tennessee Martin last week. They were 38.5 point favorites. They didn't game plan for the game. They got all the reserves in. It wasn't a max effort intensity. It's not one of these situations where Kentucky's coming in super fresh and Tennessee's coming in super worn down. The Vols do have Georgia on deck. And look, I saw what they did to Alabama's defense, so I'm not convinced that Kentucky's defense is going to slow them down. But we are talking about the highest scoring offense in the country right now. And you know what happens when teams like that face better defenses? Sometimes they get slowed down a little, although haven't seen much of that from Tennessee yet. That's a high-octane attack on steroids. So I could see the case for Kentucky here. I don't want to make the case for Kentucky here. I'm not sure that Tennessee is a team I'm excited about stepping in front of.
Teddy, great breakdown to start us off here. Yeah, just a couple things. 3-0 against the spread as a dog this year already. Kentucky under Stoops, and Tennessee scoring 50 points a game. You touched on it, Teddy. Hey, a quick handicapping question for you before we get to the second game. Big offenses like this, like Tennessee, that type of profile, up against one of the better defenses they'll probably face all year, at least in the regular season in Kentucky, just holding Mississippi State to 225 yards. Is that one of those like kind of sharp angles, so to speak, betting on that defense to kind of hold them at bay, or not really? That's kind of water under the bridge.
Well, when you see what Tennessee did to Alabama's defense, okay, it may be a sharp angle, but it's, certainly what you oftentimes see is teams that haven't faced a lot of elite defense, haven't shown they can move the football against an elite defense. Now they're stepping up in defensive class, and you see the wise guy bettors often tap the brakes there, but I'm not convinced this is that situation. Tennessee's faced good defenses. He faced LSU, they faced Alabama, and they moved the football pretty effectively in both of those contests.
Yeah, good point. Guys, moving down the list, another big game this weekend, arguably the game of the weekend again, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific kick here in the Big 12, 131, 132, TCU versus West Virginia. We are seeing the Horned Frogs, Teddy, -7 in the hook, pretty much across the board here as the road favorite. High total, 69 being the total. TCU at West Virginia.
Yeah, West Virginia coming off a really rough game against Texas Tech, in which they turned the ball over. They couldn't run the football. The defense got gashed on the ground and through the air. Back-to-back 40-point-plus games allowed. In fact, they allowed 38 to Texas the week before that. So it feels like the Neil Brown era in West Virginia is concluding toward heading toward this inevitable conclusion. right now, which just makes me a little bit reluctant to back this team. All that being said, 2 home games against Big 12 foes. They scored 42 against Kansas and 43 against Baylor, And TCU, look, TCU is living on borrowed time. Okay, they keep falling behind. The offense keeps grinding them back, and we'll give Sonny Dykes all kinds of credit for getting the Horned Frogs as far as they've gotten undefeated-wise. But look, this isn't a defense I can lay points like this on the highway. It's just not. And we're not seeing the mentality from TCU of, let's come in and just shut this team down and dominate from wire to wire. Hasn't been that way. They had the one wire-to-wire win against Oklahoma. Basically, every game that they've been in since has been a back-and-forth battle. Now, certainly they're getting great quarterback play, and certainly this offense is clicking. But, again, when you're talking about laying this price tag on the highway in Morgantown at night or, in a significant setting. Sorry, it's early. It's a noon kickoff there. I didn't mean I said at night, but I mean, it doesn't matter if it's at night or not. In Morgantown, it's going to be rowdy. I'm not convinced this is the spot I want to be laying this price with TCU this week. Respect that offense. Don't respect the defense. And they're being priced like an elite team, which they're not. They're a good team.
Heading to the ACC up next, Georgia Tech at Florida State here. So Atlanta to Tallahassee, 133, 134. The rotation numbers, we're going down in rotation order, guys, here. Those little numbers next to the team name on the Wager Talk Live odds screen. We're seeing 47.5 being the total. Another early kick here, Teddy, 9 a.m. Pacific kick, minus 24, pretty much across the board. That's the Seminoles and Doak.
So I took a flyer on Georgia Tech last week against Virginia saying, hey, this is a team. They've been bad. They've just won back-to-back games, nice upsets at Pitt, at Duke. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe we can ride this team. A team that's forcing turnovers every week. And Georgia Tech forced turnovers all last week against Virginia. But when you can't move the football against Virginia, and they could not move the football in that game. Okay. It wasn't like, okay, maybe. And Jeff Sims got hurt. Doesn't look like he's going to go this week. The backup got sacked 7 times after he came in. The offensive line got destroyed. And Virginia's not even any good at the line of scrimmage. So, here's a Georgia Tech team that is number 4 in the country in turnover margin. They forced multiple turnovers more than half their games this year. They forced 3 or more 3 different times. They're not winning those games, that is an issue. Florida State coming off the loss and then the bye, the loss to Clemson. I mean, they fought that with NC State. They fought with Clemson. They fought with Wake Forest and lost all 3 of those games. So they've had a chance to exhale. Is 24 the point spread you want to be laying with the Seminoles? I'm not convinced. This one cracked. I had to go back and look this up, Drew. Florida State has been a double-digit underdog more than they've been a double-digit favorite the last 4 years, and dating back to 2018. So this is now 5 years counting. So that kind of stands out to me as something of a surprise. We just haven't seen Florida State in this point spread range all that much in recent seasons. The one time this year they were double-digit chalk against an FBS foe, they dominated Boston College, won that game by 30.
Teddy, another big one here. Ohio State and Penn State heading to Happy Valley, 12 o'clock Eastern kick, 61 being the total. We're seeing the Buckeyes, heavy favorites here, more than 2 touchdowns, minus 15.5 on the highway. We get Ohio State at Penn State in the Big Ten here, Teddy.
So I said this at the very beginning. It might have been week 2 or week 3 when we were been doing the every game on the boards. I'm like, there's a handful of teams I have no interest in stepping in front of, namely the elite teams in college football. I remember. Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. And it kept me off at Tennessee that week that everybody liked Tennessee against Alabama. Okay. I missed a winner there. And I did cash 1 ticket on opening day. I had Notre Dame plus the points against Ohio State. It was a wrong side winner. I'll take it. That said, I ain't stepping in front of Ohio State. Okay. Not going to do it. Look what they've done the last 5 weeks. All right. Toledo, they scored 77. Wisconsin's looked good the last couple of weeks. They got their coach fired, scored 52 against the bed. The one game they didn't cover, they were minus 40 against Rutgers. They win by 39. Okay. 49-20 against Sparty, 54-10 against Iowa. This team is rolling. All right. I will not. And the thing that's scary about Ohio State, Their defense is getting better every week. Okay.
Yeah.
The defense has been dominant the last couple of weeks. Really, all season they've been dominant. I ain't betting against Ohio State. So I'll tell you that, why take the best team in college football or one of the 2 or 3 best teams in college football and say, yeah, this is the week to step in front of them. Ain't going to do it. Not the way they're playing right now. And all right, Penn State was able to beat Minnesota last week. Okay, great. We saw them play a real team in Michigan, and they were non-competitive in that ball game. Like Sean Clifford, like the passing game. But they ain't getting stops against the Buckeyes. And they ain't trading points with the Buckeyes. If I'm playing, I'm laying. Of course, the price isn't right to lay. You're not getting any bargains with Ohio State, but they're not a team I have any interest in stamping in front of. And again, when you look at Penn State's season now, all of a sudden, the win against Purdue isn't that exciting. The win against Auburn isn't that exciting. Minnesota slumping. What they did to them last week isn't that exciting. What we have from Penn State is the one data point where you tried to compete against Michigan and you weren't in the game. That concerns me here. Ohio State or pass.
Teddy, guys, we're talking with Teddy Covers here at Teddy_Covers on Twitter, WagerTalkingSportsMemo.com, a guy that's been doing it successfully for many years, maybe many decades now, but not many people out there, not too many decades, guys, but seriously, not too many people out there doing it successfully for as long as Teddy has been. Teddy's couple things I picked up from you just in philosophy and betting wise that I use myself is don't make money in college football betting on bad teams. Does it work the same in terms of not betting against good teams in college football?
Yes.
Okay. It's both of the realms.
At the end of the year, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia will all have winning point spread records. And go take a look at your bottom feeders. I don't care who you want to pick out of the bottom feeders. The vast majority of them will have losing point spread records. So, I don't like to bet against the very best teams. I don't like to bet on the very worst teams. That is not a money. There are leagues you can do that in. Not this one.
Wake Forest and Louisville up next, staying in the ACC here. We are seeing the Demon Deacons -3.5, couple -4s out there, 64 being the total in Louisville, Kentucky, Teddy.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with this one. I really don't. Wake, I have very little interest in stepping in front of Wake. From this mesh offense, it's just nobody stopping it, and I'm not convinced that we're going to see anything different this time. I've been impressed with Louisville's defense at times this season. But Wake is running a difficult to defend offense at a very high level on a week in, week out basis. And they continue to win games and cover point spreads. They've been a point spread machine, and we haven't seen the markets really catch up with them at that level. That said, Louisville's got a defense. They've got a quarterback, and Louisville was facing the abyss this season. They really were. And we've seen them kind of come back from it. Back-to-back wins and the nice victory over Pitt last time out. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in a battle in this one, but I really don't know side-wise. I don't know total-wise. It's not a game I've got a strong feel on. So when you have a game like that, it's real simple for me. There's 60-something games on the board. We'll move past this one fairly quickly. Don't know what to do with it.
The beauty about betting college football here, guys. Just a couple notes. I kind of agree with what Teddy said there. Wake Forest, it's not Wake. I'm not really looking to bet against. I just want to bet on the Demon Deacons when I'm confident they can run it up on their opponent because they're a team that will do that. I'm not so sure they're going to be able to do that though, because against really good defenses, that mesh offense that Teddy talked about, it really doesn't work the same. It works a lot better when the quarterback has a little bit of time back there. In Louisville, it's not against the same offense in UCF, but when they went down to the bounce house, they gave that Gus Malzahn rushing attack a whole lot of problems. So I could see them kind of forcing the issue here with the Wake Forest offensive front. That's what's keeping me off of the Wake Forest side, guys. We got next game up. Notre Dame and Syracuse, 12 noon Eastern in the Dome here, Teddy. We got -2 in the hook. That's Syracuse as the home favorite, 48 being the total. Really interesting handicap here, Teddy. Interested in your opinion.
Yeah, I can't say I love the Qs in this matchup. Again, it's a bubble burst. And look, they battled against Clemson last week. But when this offense faces an elite defense, remember, they scored 21 at the half last week, and I think had two They had maybe 2 first downs after halftime. I mean, the offense didn't work when facing elite teams. Remember, they forced 4 turnovers in that game and still lost. All right. Plus 3 turnover margin for the contest. But I think that Notre Dame has the defense to shut down Schrader and company. And again, when you're talking about skill position talent, I'll give Syracuse all kinds of credit for doing what they've done this season, but this is not a team loaded with skill position weapons. Notre Dame certainly better in that regard. And the Fighting Irish, they're coming off a series of uninspired efforts. They had the game against Stanford. They lost outright at home last week against UNLV. It was uninspired. The Rebels got the money. They were able to move the football against the Irish defense. And I think there's some concern that, okay, that's the real Notre Dame, what we've seen the last couple of weeks. I think the Irish are better than what we've seen the last couple of weeks. And again, the point spread range, they're not laying 3 touchdowns here. They're laying 16 to Stanford and 25 to UNLV. This is a spot they win. They're probably going to cover. Well, they got to cover because Syracuse is the favorite. I think Notre Dame, they may be having a special season, but if I'm in this one, I can only look at the Irish side plus the points. I can't come away from the bubble burst for Syracuse last week and their inability to move the football against the better defenses that they faced.
Looking towards the Fighting Irish in that one. We got a little brother versus big brother up next here, Teddy. 7:30 in the Big House. 141, 142 as we're making our way down in rotation order. Michigan State at Michigan. We're seeing Big Blue minus 22.5. Some shops showing minus 23 here. 55 being the total. What are we thinking with the Spartans and the Michigan Wolverines here, Teddy?
Sure, it hasn't been a let's lay this type of a point spread type of series over the years. Although I don't know if it's little brother, big brother. I mean, Sparty's had some great teams, and while Michigan's been better of late, certainly Michigan State doesn't view it that way. I'll just put
No, I was saying that as a joke, because of that press conference, about 10 years ago now?
Sure. Both teams coming off buys. There are some fundamental problems here for Michigan State, namely that if they can't run, they can't win, and nobody's running the football against Michigan. I mean, nobody has run the football against the Wolverines this season. So I don't trust the Spartans to make enough plays on the outside. I don't know how they move the football against the Wolverines in this game. It's difficult for me to picture Michigan State lighting up the scoreboard. But when you're talking about value, we're talking about is there real value here? Laying 23 with Michigan against their in-state rivals, coming off a scenario in which they had the blowout win over Penn State and the covering point spreads one after the next and beating good teams. I feel like from a value standpoint, Michigan isn't as good as Ohio State, and yet they're being kind of priced in that same sort of range. So it's a legit rivalry. It's not a hated rivalry. The brothers as opposed to anima. You go to Michigan and your brother goes to Michigan State. Nobody goes to Ohio State.
Okay.
Unless they become the enemy. So there's a different feel to this rivalry for the Wolverines and the Spartans. But from a betting standpoint, I don't see a lot to bet on in this one. It feels like too many points. But I don't know that from a fundamental standpoint, I can't imagine how Michigan State's going to stay competitive.
Teddy, we got 12:30 Eastern here in Charlottesville, Virginia. 143, 144. Miami Hurricanes at the Virginia Cavaliers. 48 being the total. -2. That's the Hurricanes on the road. I mean, Mario Cristobal really going to be tested here, Teddy. That loss to Duke. This team's kind of trending in the wrong direction. Now a bunch of South Florida kids heading on the road up north. I don't know. This is a dog or pass for me. What are you thinking?
So, sometimes you look back at something you said at the beginning of the season. You go, why don't I bet that every week? I came on this show. It might have been the first or second show. The first time we talked about Miami, I'm like, I don't know why they got all hot and heavy for Mario Cristobal. All he's done is fail everywhere. And then get rehired somewhere else. He's a great interviewer, clearly.
Yeah.
But all he's done is fail everywhere. And every time he fails, someone else hires him with a better job than the last time. Look at what Oregon's done since he left. I mean, you can go take a look at his jobs and what's happened after he's left those jobs. It's insane. But again, this team turned the ball over 8 times last week against Duke. They've yet to cover a point spread this season against an FBS foe. And teams like that at this stage of the campaign, they offer tremendous value. Ralph Michaels in the database came out and showed teams after 4 consecutive point spread losses and 5 consecutive point spread losses and 6 consecutive point spread losses. They're all positive expectation wagers with the teams off when you're losing ATS every week. And again, Miami has not covered a spread this year against an FBS foe. So in theory, there's all this value on the Hurricanes now. They're better than Virginia. They're a lot better than Virginia. Virginia keeps turning the ball over. There weren't many teams that the Cavs were going to be able to beat last week. Georgia Tech was just worse. They did look better at the line of scrimmage. They do have a veteran quarterback in Brennan Armstrong. But in theory, Miami's supposed to blow this team up at the line of scrimmage and win by 5 touchdowns. Or maybe not 5, 3. That's what Miami's supposed to do this week. Van Dyke's hurt. Don't like the backup. Don't like the Canes. I got to see Miami cover a point spread before I back them.
Great breakdown, Teddy. Another big game here. 145, 146, 3:30 Eastern. Cincinnati and UCF. Was a pick 'em. I guess in the last hour or two, we've seen some UCF money as we're talking midweek here, guys. -1 pretty much across the board. That's the Knights in the bounce house. 56 the total in Orlando.
Fun game, huh? This is going to be a fun game.
Oh, yeah.
And one I'm excited to talk about. When it comes to Cincinnati, their last loss in this conference was at 2019.
It was probably it was in this stadium, maybe. I mean, I think they're 0-4 against the spread in the bounce house.
Yeah,
that's against the spread. Never mind.
No, they won last year. Won and covered the last time they were here. Oh no, they were -4 and they only won by 3. You're right.
Yeah.
But we've seen the fickle era for Cincinnati. All they do is win in conference. We saw it again last week. Don't be fooled by that final score, 29-27 last week against SMU. That game was 29-14 with under 5 to play. And then SMU, TD, 3 and out, TD, missed 2-point conversion to staying under the number. But it wasn't like SMU was in the game throughout. Cincinnati dominated for most of the contest. But now you got to go, as you mentioned, from SMU in a battle in that game at the end to the bounce house in the heat and humidity of Florida. They're 11-1 straight up at home under Gus Malzahn at the bounce house. Obviously there's the things, and of course UCF coming up that awful game last week against East Carolina, in which they couldn't do anything right on the heels of back-to-back big blowouts right here at the bounce house. But there's a recipe for beating UCF. If you make Plumlee throw, you can beat UCF. That's what East Carolina did last week. And when you look at Cincinnati, you can't run against the Bearcats. They're allowing less than 3 yards per carry again this season. I'm not convinced that changes this week. And again, you have a team that hasn't lost in conference in 3 years. You want to bet against them to lose? Knock yourself out. Not with my money.
Guys, a couple games left here. This is the Every Game on the Board podcast, part number 2. Teddy covers at Teddy_covers. Wager Talk and SportsMemo.com is where you can find his premium packages. Wager Talk YouTube channel. If you're watching on replay, feel free to reply below. Let us know where you agree, where you disagree, what you're looking to bet. All is welcome here as we head to the Big Ten up next. Northwestern at Iowa. Hawkeyes -11, -11.5 as the favorites. 37.5 being the total. So laying doubles with a sub 40 total here, Teddy. What are you thinking in the Big Ten?
I'm thinking I don't want Northwestern. 17-12 last year. Again, this total open, I've never seen a total open 31.5 in college football. It's circa the very first lines here in Vegas. The total open 31.5. Obviously, it's been bet up significantly from that number. I was surprised that it opened at that number, but it wasn't a row. It wasn't like some number that didn't exist. It existed. They posted it, which tells us a little bit about these two offenses. Northwestern's gotten to 7 each of the last 2 weeks, twice in the last 3 games. They didn't have a big lead against Maryland last week and found a way to lose that game. And, we talk about programs where the NIL really hurts them. Northwestern has been killed in the transfer portal. They're not bringing kids in and they're losing kids out. And, from a talent standpoint, I worry about the Wildcats. They haven't won since opening day. I don't want any part of this team right now. If I'm playing a Northwestern game, I got to bet against them. And these are smart kids. They know their season's dead. I'm not. It's not going to be, oh, let's pull out all the stops and circle the wagons. It's already come and gone for that for Northwestern. That's a bad team. That's it. So you want to lay doubles with Iowa? An Iowa offense that scored 10 against the Buckeyes. Oh, no, only 3 against the Buckeyes. That was a defensive score. And they scored 6 against Illinois the game before that, and 14 against the Wolverines the game before that. Under.
Yeah. Take the push up, put it in your pocket. Maybe 38 is the high water mark on the total. Maybe look to bet it under Northwestern Iowa. 2 games left here. We got Maction, Teddy, next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. It's midweek Maction, so get ready here as we head to America's favorite conference, Toledo, Eastern Michigan. We're seeing the Rockets -7-point road favorites, 56 being the total. Eastern Michigan on the gray turf at home.
Eastern Michigan cannot stop any good offense. Toledo has a good offense. That's going to be a problem for the Eagles. We've seen it multiple times this season when they get a team that gets into any offensive rhythm against them. They just can't. I mean, it's a zone defense without a pass rush. You can run against the Eagles. You can pass against the Eagles. When they face a team that's clicking, they ain't going to get stops. Toledo was clicking for 3 quarters last week at Buffalo and then collapsed in the fourth, 27-10 to start of the fourth quarter. Ended up losing 34-27. Their quarterback got hurt. They're a flaky team. Toledo's A game will run circles around Eastern Michigan, and they'll put up points in bunches, and they'll win this game by margin. Toledo's non-A game, which we see sometimes in the same game, anyone could beat them. They come and they go. They're not a consistent team. So I have a slight lean over here, but I don't know if I actually get to the betting window with it. I don't trust Eastern Michigan defense. I don't know that I trust the Rockets defense, but I need some clarity on Toledo's quarterback situation before I would actually bet this one up and over the total.
Teddy, last game, 4-part number 2, Old Dominion in Georgia State. We're seeing the Panthers -3.5 at home, the old Turner Field where the Atlanta Braves used to play, 55.5 being the total in downtown Atlanta.
Yeah, I talked last week about I didn't see a team that looked better, that played better last week than Old Dominion in that blowout win of the Coastal Carolina, the 49-21 game. And what happened last week? They're favored, and they lose outright to Georgia Southern. So clearly Old Dominion's A game can be good enough to beat anyone, but they don't bring it every week. Georgia State coming off a bad loss to App State on the heels of what had been a pretty promising campaign. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Old DU bounce back in this one. That said, they don't see an offense like Georgia State's very often. This one could end up being a relatively high-scoring affair, lean over between Old Dominion and Georgia State.
Teddy covers on Twitter at Teddy_covers every play since February, 245 and 196, 56% plus over 120% ROI. Great NBA handicapper, NFL. Obviously knows his college football here, MLB World Series as well. Great time to check him out. Wager Talk and sportsmemo.com. One of the best in the business. Teddy, any final thoughts for the show before we shut it down? And do you have a most confident play of the section, the one you like the most?
So I realized that I didn't talk about it when we when I was talking about the game, but it's just a confident play right now. I want to go back to Ohio State, Penn State.
Okay.
61 is the total for this contest. All the respect in the world for Ohio State's offense, but that number looks real high to this better. Series history doesn't merit that total. I believe in Ohio State's defense right now, and I don't know they're going to keep scoring the way they've been scoring against the Nittany Lions. So lean under for Ohio State and Penn State on Saturday as the most confident play. And my college football, as always, will be posted up first thing at the latest, first thing Friday morning. Sometimes we're able to post it Thursday night, but we'll have the full report up and available for purchase over at Wager Talk and sportsmemo.com by 9 a.m. Pacific time on Friday morning.
Teddy covers, ladies and gentlemen. Guys, that does it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Kelly Stewart in part number 3 coming up. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to reply below. Please smash that like button. Cash those tickets.